Good morning. Welcome to this morning's webinar from EcoProd. I am just going to give this a moment or two to make sure that I have got everybody joining correctly from the waiting room and that I've pressed all the right buttons and I haven't made any technical errors with how we're running. No, looks good. Good. I can see we've got people joining the live session. So just bear with me one moment. Okay. Okay, so let's make a start. So our topic for this morning is how to reduce water consumption in your business. Before we kind of launch into the content, I've just got a few kind of housekeeping points before we start. So we are recording the session today, and once we're done here, we will get that processed and we'll get an email out to you later today or tomorrow morning that has a link to watch back the full video and has an opportunity to download all of the slides that we're using today. So everything that you see will be available to you afterwards, and you can share that with your colleagues should you wish. That's absolutely fine. As I say, the slides will be in there as well. So anything that we're presenting today that has any live links, those links will be available to you in the slides when you get them. You can ask questions as we go through. So your lines are all muted automatically using this webinar function, but we do encourage questions, please. There is, if you hover your mouse in the bottom of your Zoom window, there's a little Q&A function down there. It tends to disappear. You have to hover your mouse over the bottom of the window to get it to appear. If you pop questions in there as they occur to you, I'll answer what I can in the background as we're going through, but we will all stay on the line at the end of the presentation and I'll read those out of our presenters and we'll get them covered for you one way or the other. So the agenda that you'll have seen when you signed up is the running order for today is just a few introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about why water saving is important and why water saving is important now. We tend to structure the way that we talk about water saving into three areas. So using less water, wasting less water, and then reusing and recycling any water that you might have access to. So we will structure some of our content around those kind of three pillars around water saving. And then we'll finish off by talking about water management strategies, why one would have a water management strategy and where to start with developing one. And then we'll move on to any questions that have come in through the presentation. So you'll notice that you have four of us on the call today. So my name is Rachel Clinton. I'm on the business development team here at EcoProd. I'm mostly in the background, kind of doing the hosting and covering the questions. The other three people that you see on the call are our main presenters today. So I think if we just work through and introduce ourselves, Marcus.
Yeah, many thanks, Rachel. Morning to everybody joining this webinar. I'm Marcus Rose. I'm the founder of EcoProd, director and general manager. Actually, my training background is I'm a mechanical and electrical engineer and ran an operation with the mechanical electrical engineering space in the construction industry for many years before we founded EcoProd. And I'll introduce my colleague, Jacob Tompkins.
Hello, welcome to the webinar. I am Jacob Tompkins. My background is in water research and water technology for about, unfortunately, 35 years now. I do a lot of the water consultancy and technical stuff with EcoProd. I'm also a visiting prof at Exeter. I run a small water company and I'm head of a water technology accelerator. So anything, I don't know much else, but anything to do with water or water technology, that's me. Thanks. And I'll hand over to Paul.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Musgrove. I'm the sales director at EcoProd. My background since the mid-90s has been in commercial projects and specification works. The last 3 decades specialising in water reduction, carbon reduction, and helping clients improve their water footprints. That's about me.
So just to give the team on this call some background as to EcoProd. EcoProd stands for ecological economical product, and everything we do, as you can probably appreciate, is focused around water. Now, we often don't realize how influential everything in life is in its dependence on water. It's a very unique commodity, and we are facing some very extreme water scarcity issues here in the UK. And so the three pillars that we talk about today on reducing consumption and wasting water, and then looking into the strategies of recycling, reusing water, is very pertinent today. And I also like to sort of mention that we represent global brands in the products that we've brought into the UK over many years, since 2006. And a lot of these we have exclusively available to offer to the UK market. And each one of those manufacturers actually represents unique selling points that are not seen in any other products in the marketplace today. And before we move on to the core of the presentation, I'd just like to say that saving water is not only a responsibility upon all of us, but also it's intelligent and it's smart, because every litre of water you save, there is not only a return on investment, but also on the water in terms of value, but also there's quite a significant carbon number attached to water as well. So being wise with water is very important, but it's also very intelligent. And now I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Jacob, who's going to go through the next two slides for us. Before we go on, I'm just going to give you a snapshot of some of our customers here in the UK. You can see on the screen there. We basically do serve the industry for water across every single sector. And now I'm going to hand over to Jacob.
Thank you, Marcus. Okay, so why is saving water important? It's fairly simple. We are experiencing population growth. We're experiencing climate change. We're experiencing increased water pollution. And what that means is there will not be enough water. There will not be enough water for your business in coming years. Just this year, there were 35,000 people in Kent who didn't have water. And that meant there were schools closures. There are major issues with all water companies at the moment, where the difference between supply and demand is very, very tight. So there could be interruptions in supply in a large number of areas at any time. And the other issue is water companies have a statutory duty to supply households. They don't have a statutory duty to supply businesses. So you don't have a God-given right to water, unfortunately. Now, at the same time, daily use is 140 litres per person per day. Now, if you look around your office, or when you're on the bus, or when you're on the tube, just think how many people there are, multiply that by 140 litres. And I know it rains a lot in the UK, but it doesn't rain that much. There's an aim to reduce that to 100 litres, but actually we're nowhere near there. So it's important because water security is essential for your business. You've probably got backup generators, but I don't think you've got backup water supply. What happened if you didn't have water for the day? You would have to shut your business down, or you'd have to shut your production down. But also, saving water saves you money, and it reduces your carbon footprint. There's a very large amount of carbon embedded in water because of it's heavy, it's difficult to heat, and it's difficult to pump around. And also, saving water shows your commitment to sustainability, both to your customers, but also to your bank or your insurers or your supply chain. So I think the key things here are it's essential to save water for its own sake, for your security in the first place. It's essential from an energy viewpoint, and it's essential from a reputational viewpoint. Seem to have gone on to that. Right, next slide. So this gives you an idea of what climate change is doing and what volatility of climate means. So the first slide, is the rainfall anomaly for last year. So the brown means a deficit in water. So there were very large areas, in fact, pretty much all of the UK, apart from the very west of Scotland, had much, much lower rainfall than normal. But then if you look into the detail of that, in February 2023, we had, and this is unusual, it's the winter drought. We had the worst drought for about 80 years. Yep, look how dark brown that is. Dark brown means very, very dry soil, no rainfall. A month later, we had the wettest and highest rainfall for 40 years. So what climate change is doing Imagine the climate's a pendulum, and normally it swings from side to side and you get summer and winter. It's just knocked that pendulum all over the place. We're not seeing normal seasons. We're seeing really long dry periods. And when it does rain, we're seeing massive, intense rainfall that doesn't soak into the ground. It just causes flooding. We're seeing massive heat waves, and we're seeing freezing, and we'll see more snow. Quite often people say, how can there be climate change if there's more snow? Well, that's quite simple. When the atmosphere heats, it enables it to contain more moisture, which means more snowfall, ironically. So what we're going to see with climate change is extremes of weather. And yes, we've got reservoirs, but not enough to store this sort of water. It can't deal with the floods. So what we need to do is look at what we call distributed infrastructure. So everyone needs to think about rainwater harvesting. Everyone needs to think about what they should do in a drought. And this is incumbent on businesses. And we're going to come back to this later. But this gives you an idea that climate change is real and it's having an impact right now. By the year 2030, I think we'll be in the position where a major UK city doesn't have any water, or big businesses have to shut down. Just for an example, this was 2017, I think 2017, 2018, Severn Trent, right in the centre of the country, and I'm from Dudley originally, so I know it rains a lot. They didn't have enough water, and their choice was to supply Solihull Hospital or Jaguar Land Rover. Luckily, Jaguar Land Rover obviously said, no, we'll shut down. Jaguar Land Rover shut down for over a month. This is a major international business in the UK, in the West Midlands, shutting down because of a lack of water. So if you don't think this is serious, it really, really is. So think a lot about water, more than you do about energy. Because as I say, there are alternatives to energy, no alternative to water. Sorry, I've ranted a little bit on that. Go on to the next slide.
Right, this is where I'm going to take over, Jacob. Thank you for that. That puts the position of the water situation in the UK in place. What we do at EcoProd is we break this down, as Rachel referred to at the beginning of the introduction, into 3 pillars. So I'm going to focus on pillar 1 first of all. Okay? So simple, quick wins to reduce your water use in your consumption in your business. Waterless urinals would typically save around 100,000 litres of water per year, but the additional benefit of that factor is a carbon reduction of about 17.5 kilos. So you're achieving aims and to reduce water, but also a carbon reduction towards net zero targets, which your company may have. Urinals without water are extremely hygienic if they're installed correctly, and will not provide a smelly area as a lot of people assume. We've got lots of client references which we can share with you. We can take you to projects to demonstrate how good they are. Switching to dual flush systems is something that a lot of people have done, and we support that, but we also are quizzical about the toilet side. We need to appreciate the user, because a lot of dual flush systems get misused, with both small and large flushes being used. So in principle, is it better for your business to consider a single flush, but at a lower volume? And again, we have products that can actually provide both options, and also solutions which need to be investigated on a bespoke basis in our view. And of course, maintenance. It's great installing products, but if they're not maintained properly, then you could be losing water down the back of a pan, which is invisible to be seen. So in principle, using less water is absolutely the key point of any water conservation, and urinals and toilets are big users of water, and we've got solutions for quick wins there to help your businesses. Taps, we all have taps, and I'm sure we've all seen taps running in a business, dripping in a business, not being able to stay open, not being able to stay closed, different types of taps, lever taps, concussive taps. The key benefit from an electrical sensor tap is we can guarantee you a low flow, starting from 1.9 litre low flow, which still gives a really good hand wash. So we don't have to consider the problems or challenges with anybody that's got disabilities, because the sensor taps can work with all inclusive people. Great opportunity to reduce it. And again, what's important about this, these are quick, cheap wins that can be done with a return on investment that will help you pay for that investment, typically in under 2 years, sometimes a lot shorter. It's not unusual for me to carry out surveys on sites and find taps flowing into sinks at 20 to 30 litres per minute. You take that out and put it down to less than 2 litres a minute, and it's a significant saving when you consider the number of people in your business, both your staff, your visitors, coming through on a daily basis. And if your business is open all year round, it's a significant amount of water. And we can run calculations to help you identify what that saving will be and what the return on investment would be. Showers are no different. At the end of the day, we always use showers, and we can always try and encourage people to shower for less time. But again, one of the common things that we find, and just 2 surveys I've carried out this week in the West Country where they have got a water scarcity issue already, and the flow rates were in excess of 30 litres per minute per shower. And a simple and effective change of a shower head, or if further investments available, a simple investment of a new shower to replace that, it could be achieved, and massive water reductions, typically about 40%, but in the case I've seen this week, it's probably nearer 70%. And that's water that's being used on a daily basis without even consideration. It's just there, sitting there. And you may have that, excuse me, you may have that in your business. So these all simple wins, affordable, quick wins, that we can help to reduce how much water you're using. Kitchens are much the same. Kitchen taps get left running all the time. Recently at a caravan and camping site I visited, we witnessed some users of it running both hot and cold pillar taps, probably for about a 10-minute period. We tested the flow rate afterwards at 25 litres per minute, rather than filling up a bowl of water or a sink of water, which would use significantly less. So again, whether it's in the kitchen, whether it's in the toilet, showers, urinals, at the end of the day, there's some simple adjustments that we can make. But I think it all comes on to something that we think about. We've always done it this way. So getting people to change their minds is really important, and the way we behave. So
I'd also just like to comment there as well, Paul, is what we find with clients is the significant reduction in the delivery of hot water. So we're not only just talking about cold water volumes, we're talking about the non-delivery of hot water in some of this technology, and it's very significant. We had one client who, just changing their taps in their washrooms, they saved their energy bill by 12%. That's significant.
Good point.
I think Marcus is exactly right here. It is the simplest way to reduce your energy and your CO2. And people generally ignore it because they think it's water, but actually it has a significant impact on energy use. Just to give you an example, so Scottish Water, for instance, is the largest electricity user in the whole of Scotland. The amount of energy embedded within water, and for heating water and producing ice and pumping it round, is enormous. It's 8 times harder to heat 1 kilo of water than 1 kilo of granite. The specific heat capacity is massively high, which means it's really, really expensive to heat. Sorry.
So washroom savings, waterless urinals, 100,000 litres per urinal. I put a post on LinkedIn this morning questioning why you would use fresh water to clean an existing urinal. Why not change, save yourself money, get return on investment? Taps, 70% on average. Programming, sensor taps is really interesting. The technology has moved on vastly. And when we demonstrate our products to clients, they're shocked by how fluid the technology is now, the way you can control hygiene flushes, temperature controls, when you want the taps to be working from a lower flow rate, what you want to achieve, who's using it. All these things are considered points. And there's so many adjustments and reports that you can get from your taps. Why would you want reports from your taps? Well, number one, to make sure that they're not stagnating. So it helps with your Legionella and L8 process. 2, from a report to actually ensure that all of your products are actually being used on a regular basis. If they're not being used, why are they there in the first place? And should you remove them to, again, enhance your hygiene performance? So washroom savings across the board can be quite significant. And there's many ways that we can approach this, but no 2 clients that we visit are ever the same. And it's really important to appreciate a bespoke solution and understand your own water footprint before the next steps can be actually put in place.
And also on that point, Paul, I'd like to comment that also for clients that have multiple sites or multiple washrooms across a site, in installing this equipment, you can normalize your use. That means you can track between building to building or site to site. And whoever's managing that has then got a clear picture, because you've got the reporting, you've got a clear picture of what water is being used where. So it helps you manage the whole of your estate.
Yeah, you could probably run a benchmarking report for that as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
On that, we can certainly help with benchmarking. There are 3 normal ways of doing that. So you would benchmark against number of full-time employees or number of guests. You would benchmark against kilogram of production, or you'd benchmark up against allowable lettable area. And by normalizing it, as Marcus says, that enables you to compare between sites, but also with your competitors.
Good point, Jacob.
Good point.
Thank you. All of this is great. We can change product. We can reduce water flow, which is fantastic. Water reduction, energy reduction, carbon reduction. Who wouldn't want to achieve those things? Spend a little, gain the money back very quickly on your savings, and then you're saving year on year. That's great, but you need people to change. The statement that we get, we've always done it this way, is something we commonly hear. And when you change a product, why have we changed this? Why have we done this? And that they're common statements led by staff who are not informed. So again, changing products is fantastic. Advising your team, advising your clients why you're making these changes, ensuring that everybody in the business is on point with what you're trying to achieve. Sustainability goals, environmental goals, financial goals, net zero goals are all key to the success of this, but talking to people to advise them how to look after the products and actually plan for it properly is absolutely essential.
Yeah, just on that point, Paul, we've found, haven't we, that if you actually share this stuff and your staff get involved, they actually take ownership of it. It's very effective. You've only got to start with what we call a water champion to kick this off and get it to filter down through the whole establishment. We find that people then really appreciate and buy into it, and it brings a sense of well-being and sort of like success. And it's sort of like it has a knock-on effect.
It certainly does. Just to reference one recent client down in Wiltshire, where we provided some complete washroom fit out, but they were really taken on board with the tool that we provide to connect to the taps. And once a quarter now, he's going to the taps and downloading his reports, and he's staggered to find 2 key things from his side. Number one, he can actually look to see how many people are using those taps, how many times that tap is opening and closing over a 3-month window, which is really vital to him to understand the footfall through the business. But 2, on this report, it also gives him his water consumption. And that's vital. And he's sharing that with his business on a national basis to say, hey guys, shouldn't we be implementing this across all estates? Because this is what we're saving down on this one site. Why don't we do this and actually multiply those savings by the other 300 sites we've got in the UK? So again, changing people's behaviour, providing more information and supporting that whole process all ties everything up nicely and gives a complete service in my view. Moving on to pillar 2, if you're going to use less water, fundamentally, you're going to waste less water. So let's have a look at how we can waste. Wasting water isn't just to do with taps and showers and reducing flows. It's about avoiding leaks. It's viewed that between 8 and 13% of toilets installed in the UK, both domestic and commercial, will be leaking at some point. Now, those leaks aren't necessarily behind the toilet from pipework. It could actually be within the cistern combination, and the water could be leaking into the pan. Well, we have devices to alert people to make sure that that can't happen. Affordable devices that can save you a lot of money every year, between £300 and up to £6,000 per annum. Now, those figures aren't our figures. They're from the WaterWise team and the advice about toilet leakage across the UK. So it's a serious issue. So we have a leak sensor from Agradio, which can also control and measure temperature. Now, if that's important to you as part of your PPMs, and appreciate whether you've got a water leak and alert, fantastic, but also if you can start to measure temperatures and appreciate cold and hot temperatures inside your area, again, that might help support PPM applications as well as reducing water at the same time. Marcus, anything to add on that?
No, just no, Jacob's going to add something.
Sorry, it's also worth pointing out that from an insurance viewpoint, seeing lots and lots of insurers requiring this sort of stuff now, particularly if you've had a previous leak. I think this will become standard, that insurers are expecting leak detection systems in because of the huge cost of leaks for water damage as well.
Yeah, very good point.
I hate to repeat myself again, but it's changing behavior again. It's encouraging people to take shorter showers, to reduce down that flow in the first place. So if you've got a lower flow from 20 litres, say, down to 5-6 litres and still get an effective shower, which can be done with new technology, that's one way of reducing it. But also, if you encourage people to go from 10 minutes a shower, it's like my son does when he was in the gym at university, down to 5 minutes, down to 6 minutes. Any improvement per minute, per literage, is a factor of a mathematical combination, and we can actually save a lot, but we need to encourage that. And we have a module which can go in the shower and actually advise people how long they're showering for, which might be a really good asset in a large organization like a university, like a hotel group, where we don't really know what people do in the bathrooms. It's a private area. Even in our own homes, we don't know what our family and our partners do, other than they spend a lot of time in there. We don't know our habits. Well, this can actually help with showering habits and actually starting to understand people's behavior in the shower. And if we can reduce water there and help people through education, and this system, this reporting system that can calculate that, has an online platform where you can actually start to investigate and really get a good picture of your water usage in your building. So it can help you advise and plan, change products, advise clients. We all remember the environmental impact of washing your towels in a hotel. The little stickers that hotels used to either hang on the heater or stick on the wall to say, do you want to reuse your towels? It's the same principle. We're doing it with towels for the environment, for detergents and water. We can do the same from the user application in trying to encourage them to shower for short periods.
And also, again, Paul, it's a repeat. It's creating a water saving culture.
Yeah.
That's, at the end of the day, is effective, and it's going to save you money.
There's also water intelligent systems, management systems. Again, this has an insurance application behind it as well, where it's actually a sponsored product by one of the UK's leading insurers, where you can install a system and it will actually use an algorithm to understand the water flow in your building. If that pattern changes with a spike, it has the ability to switch the water off, either on a zonal area or complete intake into the building. That's a design principle which you have to consider the impact of the type of building that you are, and also the type of people you've got coming through the building. But again, great solution to reduce and mitigate the potential for vast damages in thousands of pounds. We witnessed a university a few years ago which had a claim, and it was reaching into the hundreds of thousands of pounds, where on the 5th floor of a building there was a water leak which went down through labs floor by floor by floor, causing devastating damage. And again, a simple installation of this type of system in various sizes, the valves are available, it could have stopped that from happening. So there are ways that we can actually protect buildings supported by insurance cover as well. Maintenance is so important. You'd be surprised. As a team, we probably visit between 50 and 60 sites a month to either survey or advise or give guidance on new products, new solutions. And the amount of sites we go to that don't actually have a maintenance regime in plan. So when we advise people to change products, the secondary part of our advice is, how are you going to look after them? we want to provide training programs. So if we suggest and recommend to any of our clients a process of changing a product, installing a water management system, it's important that we encourage them to learn the products, simple training procedures. How often should you look after something? How often should you flush something? How often should you download reports? Looking for leaks, measuring all this. You need a PPM plan in place. Now, many good businesses do that, but then they don't necessarily have the qualified staff to enforce that. So it's, if you're going to invest in water saving products, leak protection products, to actually reduce your water, reduce your carbon, reduce your energy costs, it's important to think of the next step as part of the whole process, so that we protect the investment that you make.
Yes, very good point, Paul. And I just like to comment on the last bullet point on that slide about getting equipment professionally installed. You find a lot of manufacturers will actually support you in longer guarantees, extended guarantees. It might not be actually in their T's and C's printed, but if you engage with them, you may well find that they're prepared to extend guarantee periods to support you and support your after sales and maintenance teams. So I think we're now going to move on to pillar 3.
Yeah, sorry, if I could just on that last one as well, Marcus. I think it's worth bearing in mind there are legal implications there as well, with water regulations and all that sort of stuff. So getting stuff properly installed and using the right type of plumbers or professional organizations and getting advice is the right thing to do, but also is that there are statutory bits around that people generally don't realize.
Yeah, very good point.
Pillar 3.
Okay.
With pillar 3, we're going to hand back to Jacob to get back behind some of the science and the bigger opportunities of reusing water and recycling water. So over to you, Jacob.
Right. So there's quite a lot of detail here. So feel free to contact us afterwards for more information, because obviously in this timescale we can only do a quick overview. So integrated water management, what's that about? That's about looking effectively at a holistic view of water. So where does water come from? How is it used, and where does it go? And in this bit, we're looking at it within the context of a catchment. So a catchment is the area where rain falls and drains into a single river or piece of groundwater. And within that, humans effectively disturb that water cycle. So we build loads and loads of concrete. That means that water runs off more quickly. That causes flooding, means it doesn't soak into the ground. So what we're trying to do with integrated water management is to renaturalize those systems. And that's where ponds and swales and rain gardens come in. So if you look at your site, be it a shop or a large out of town factory, you're getting water falling on the roof. Where does that go? Generally goes into the sewer, and you're being charged for that sewerage. You're also being charged for surface water drainage. And anywhere in the north of England, because it's charged differently, that can be very, very expensive, tens of thousands. So it's worth looking both from an environmental viewpoint and from an economic viewpoint at things like ponds and swales and rain gardens. So when the water comes off your roof, it could go into a landscape rain garden. So you could look at the landscaping around your business, and rather than it being something that you have to water and costs you, it could actually be an area for cost saving, because you could be taking water from roofs or from car parks and putting them into a swale. Is basically a dry ditch that can fill with water. And creating ponds and stuff like this would reduce your surface water charges. It would reduce flooding. And there's a lot of talk now about biodiversity net gain. So if for instance, there's a new housing estate being built next to your factory, they have to show biodiversity net gain. So they might be interested in part funding you to have a pond on your site. So there are quite a few different grants and incentives around this. The other bit, if you don't have a big out-of-town factory, you can always put in a green roof or a green wall. We're starting to see those in cities a lot. They have several advantages. There's the drainage advantage, the reduction of flooding, the reduction in what we call urban heat islands, for often cities get hotter than the surrounding countryside in summer. Also, they're really good to look at. They make your buildings stand out. They're good for biodiversity. And again, we've got loads of examples of this. They're not that difficult to do, but it's worth bearing in mind that you can't do both rainwater harvesting and green roofs at the same time. So you just have to think of the wider picture when you do this. Attenuation, Oh, sorry. That's fine. We've gone into reusing rainwater. So here's a typical factory or large tank. Now, obviously, this won't work in some city centres where the roof area is small and you don't have much space. But for large out-of-town factories or buildings, or some care homes or hospitals, large buildings with a big roof space, it's certainly worth looking at the feasibility of using rainwater. Although sometimes, and we're going to come on to this when we talk about water strategies, it may be more expensive than doing simpler water saving measures. It's good for the environment, it has flooding benefits, and it can save you money, but it depends. It's on a case-by-case basis. You also need to make sure you're sizing the tank correctly, both for the amount of water that you're getting off the roof, the amount of water that you want to store, and the amount of water you want to use. So you've got to think about, if I'm going to keep this rainwater, what do I do with it? How do I use it? And if you don't have enough capacity to use it, could you sell it to someone else? So rainwater tanks are interesting, but not as simple as you might think. And probably the simplest is just a very large water butt. And we advise quite a lot of sports clubs and things where we're telling them at the moment, just put in a large storage tank and use it for outdoor irrigation or for pitch irrigation. So rainwater is intuitive, but slightly more complex than you think. And we can certainly advise on that or put you in touch with partners who can look at that. But before you do anything on rainwater, look holistically at your water use and different costs. Next slide, please. Okay, right, smart rainwater harvesting. So this is the bit. So basically, when it rains, there's something called a hydrograph, which is a lumpy graph that looks like that, of how much rain there is and how much runs off and causes flooding. So what we're seeing is more and more intense rainfall, so big storms. And when you get a big storm, the ground can't cope with it, so it causes a flood. However, if every building had a large, what we call attenuation tank, it could take the peak of that flood, so it could take quite a lot of the big bit of the rainfall and store it, and then release it more slowly. This would mean that you wouldn't have flooding. Now, there are some councils at the moment who are interested in providing grants for this distributed attenuation. So it could be, you could put in a tank, you could reuse the water, you could get a discount on your drainage charges, and you could potentially sell this as flood attenuation measures. All of this is fairly in its infancy because we're now starting to realize that we've got a massive problem with floods and droughts. But there are policies out there that are being developed, and you can also approach councils and water companies and people like this and say, look, I've got a huge roof, I want to put in a tank, are there any grants? And again, we can help with that. Next slide, please. Okay, same thing, reusing stormwater. Now, you have to be slightly careful of this because, you know, there's an example of a car park or a road there. It's fine, but think about the stuff that might be running off these surfaces. So you may get oils, you may get metals and things from tires. So you need to think about treatment. And examples of treatment here, the most interesting is the green treatment, where you basically just run it through soil, let the plants take up some of the contaminants, or you can put in filter, or you can put in bioremediation. Sometimes by that we mean reed beds. You'll have seen these in different places. So you trickle the water through a reed bed, the reeds take up the contaminants. Or you can put in a simple filter. The blue one we see there, they need washing and changing. Or you can use chemical treatment for it. But it's worth considering contamination and also potential for reuse when you're looking at stormwater. We've got some examples of this from around the world. Grey water, right? So there are several types of water. So there's blue water, which is rain. There's blue water, which is the stuff from that you get from the water company. Green water, which is effectively rainwater. Black water, which is the stuff you don't want to touch. That's stuff from sinks where you've been cutting up meats. That's stuff directly from toilets. But then there's grey water. So when you have a shower, that water is only on you for a few seconds. It's not really that contaminated unless you're washing your dog in the shower. The stuff from washing machines, similarly. So there's quite a lot of low-grade contaminated water. This is what we call grey water. Now, this can be recycled. Again, it's expensive, but it does give you a backup of water supply. It's very, very good for water security. It again means that you're not putting stuff into the drain, so you can get a discount on your drainage and your sewerage. And it's quite a good way to be both resilient and independent in terms of water. There are several systems, and we can show you quite a few, that work in different ways that are scaled. But you have to make sure that it's right for the amount of grey water you're producing, the amount of water you want to reuse, the level of contamination, and also you need some storage space for this, and it needs to be properly maintained. So there are quite a few things to think about around grey water, but it is starting to become increasingly mainstream. Is certainly something worth looking at. Next one, please. Okay, landscaping. We touched on this before, but actually it's quite simple. Quite a lot of offices or buildings have landscaping, and it might be a few pot plants around the office. And again, you can top those up by pouring your leftover water on those, or it might be a full-scale landscape gardens approaching your beautiful country house where your hotel. Now, in these cases, first of all, think about natural planting. Think about the plants that survive in those areas, and think about drought-tolerant planting. So, as the climate changes, you might want to move to more to rosemary or to some of the sorts of things that you see in Mediterranean gardens. Don't just put in hideous decking and slabbing. Don't cover your car parks over with concrete. Try and see whether you can integrate planting into that for several reasons. It increases infiltration of water. It reduces flooding at the same time. It produces oxygen. It cleans up contaminants. It's really good for biodiversity, and it makes your workspace look a lot nicer. And again, there may well be some grants associated with this. If you're not able to do your landscaping, then look at the simple things like when you're watering. So if you have to water, try and use rainwater. If you have to use mains water, then water when there isn't evapotranspiration. So do it in the evening or the morning. Look at the timers for your irrigation system. Also look at MOTing your irrigation system once a year to make sure it's optimally delivering the same thing. We've all seen an irrigation system where it spends half the water spray in the car park. And then, as it says here, think about living walls that can be fed with grey water. So that's an interesting potential use of your grey water. So lots and lots of things you can do around landscaping, and also worth mentioning water features. So everyone likes a big squirty fountain, looks lovely, but unfortunately it's got high evaporative loss. So it might be worth looking at trickle fountains with recycling systems. You see these quite a lot now, and there are a lot of new type of water features that still have biodiversity benefit, but have lower evaporation losses and are more appropriate for the sort of climate we're moving to. Sorry, covered quite a lot there, but we're happy to talk about these. Well, I'm going to have a rest for a second and bring Marcus in on this one as well. We'll both talk through this one on air conditioning and cooling towers. Quite a complex subject, but certainly an interesting area for water use. Marcus, do you want to start and then I'll chip in?
Yeah, you need to consider what the quality of the water is you want to try and reuse here. Cooling towers and air conditioning, even we're being asked about now the discharge from base exchange water softeners as well. Yes, all this water can be reused, but it needs carefully looking at. And you also need to ask yourself at the beginning, what's the driver for this? What's the water going to be used for? And that will dictate what you'll need to do to that water in terms of its filtration. Do you want to add to that, Jacob? Because it's quite a big subject, but it's very site specific, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that one thing to talk about is quite often cooling towers have a set cleaning regime. So once the total dissolved solids hit a certain level within the condensate and the concentrate, the water's discharged. You can optimize that. So you could probably, instead of having 3 or 4 cycles of water, you could up that to 5 or 6. But you need to look at it on a site-by-site basis. Quite often, there's a lot of caution and a lot of safety built in to air conditioning and cooling towers, and you can adjust that. But obviously, in this case, and there's a question on hygiene here, hygiene comes first.
Absolutely.
Making sure that Legionella is okay, making sure that you are fine in terms of hygiene beats all water efficiency. And it's worth pointing out that all the products that EcoProd use are RAS approved, and they're tested in terms of hygiene. And quite often, when you and actually, I'll talk about this when we come onto a water management system, but hygiene is key. Okay, anything else you want to talk on this one, Marcus?
No, I think we should move on to
well, right, we're sort of talking about this. So in quite a few of these, we've talked about how these things fit into the wider context. So a water management strategy, I would recommend everyone to do this. And despite the fact I do consultancy work and love to do water management strategies, do it yourself first before you get in any expensive consultants. I can see Paul pulling his hair out there, but it's worth just thinking yourself, where and why should you do this? So you don't think about water. What you need to do is think about water like you think about money. Next slide, please. So, oh, right. So the benefits of doing it, regulatory stuff, obviously, cost reduction, carbon reduction. We've said that there's a lot of carbon embedded within water. Environmental benefit, that goes as standard now. Benefiting your staff and your customers. Staff, I mean, there's quite a lot of research on this, but staff and customers tend to like companies and favor companies where they have an environmental record. It improves staff retention. Like just a simple bit when your kids come home and say, our homework is, what do you do for the environment, mommy and daddy? And then you can say, well, our company does this around water. And then it guides decision making. This is a bit that we've been talking about all the way through. So do you do work on your cooling towers? Should you do rainwater harvesting? Quite often we get companies coming to us saying, we want to do rainwater harvesting. And the first question we ask isn't, yes, we'd love to sell you one of those. How much do you want to spend? It's, why do you want to do rainwater harvesting? How does it fit within the wider thing? Because sometimes the most intuitive solutions might not be the right ones. In the same way you wouldn't spend money without looking at your budget, you need to do the same for water. And when we look at this, so what are the elements of a water strategy? It's the same as a financial budget. Where does your water come from? What are you using it for? Where does it go to? How much does each stage cost? Now, as I say, you would obviously do that for everything else with your accountants, and you wouldn't go out and spend 10,000 quid without saying, well, hang on a minute, what are we doing this for? It's the same with water and the same with investment in water. You need to do the same thing. And this will give you the tools to understand. Now, we are very, very good at doing water management strategies, but frankly, just think about it yourself first. Gather all your water bills in one place, that sort of stuff. So how do you develop a water management strategy? Well, the easiest way is come to us. We can do that. But think about how can you improve what you've already got. So you've already got some water systems. You may already have a rainwater harvesting system. Sometimes we find companies where they've got a rainwater harvesting system and they didn't even know. And all they've got to do is refurbish it and put it back into play. Quite often, old buildings will have a big Victorian brick vault that was used for rainwater, but it's not being used. In the 50s, they said, oh, we don't need that. And it's just empty. These can be refurbished, and there are grants for that sort of thing. How do you monitor and maintain your water management strategy once it's in place? So this is what Marcus talked about before, about having a champion or having a board report. So, you know, just once every other board meeting, have a line saying water. And it might be you don't have to discuss anything, but bringing, and I always say this, bringing water from the washroom to the boardroom is one of the first things you need to do in terms of taking a handle on your water costs and your water use. And then that comes on to who's responsible. So you can have a water management strategy, but you need someone who's going to deliver it. Who does it sit with? What's the chain of command? And then how do you keep it live? Well, that's down to a single person, but then what happens if they change? And how do you maintain momentum? That's again where it needs to be in the boardroom. Next slide, please. How do you track it? Okay, so this bit about the water supplier. So there is now and there has been for about 5 years, competition in the water sector. So there are the big wholesale water companies, Thames Water, Severn Trent, South West Water, like that. And then there are smaller retail companies, Wave, Water Plus, Business Stream, my one, the water retail company. There are lots and lots of those, and you can choose. And because there's competition, it means that your water supplier is very interested in helping you. So they might be able to help you with smart metering. My water company, we've just given a load of free smart meters away to a customer. They might be able to help you with online billing. They might be able to set up alarms if your water consumption suddenly in 1 month is 3 times what it was the month before. So talk to them about that and see how they can help. You could also talk to the wholesaler. They may have grants and things that can help. Smart meters. So smart meters give you the data that you need. So effectively, the water companies will be able to give you smart meter data that will tell you, I mean, it can go down to 15 minutes, generally monthly or weekly is enough. It'll enable you to track, and it's what Marcus talked about before, about benchmarking. It'll enable you to benchmark your water use. Measure before and after any changes you make. So, you know, if you're going to change some urinals, do a couple of measurements beforehand and then do measurements afterwards to see what the actual savings are. And then you can do a return on investment calculation for how much it costs. And ask suppliers whether they can help you. You know, as Paul was saying, Aguado leak detection, great stuff. It's also got building management system capacity in it, so you can monitor water use. There's some really interesting bits out there. And even some of the taps, like some of the Conti taps, within them, they will have stuff that can link to building management systems. So there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of people who can help you. Just ask for it. Next slide, please. Okay, other resources. Is something. Oh, sorry. Yes, this is on to Rachel. Sorry. Just before we go on to that, just a very quick thing on the water management. The thing to factor in is once you've done your basic thing, once you've looked at your water bills, once you've looked at your water consumption, once you've done your benchmarking, then you should come to someone like us, and then we can talk to you about what grants are available, where the best water spend is. You can then make proper informed decisions about the best place to do spend, what the return on investment is, and what the other benefits are. Sorry, over to Rachel now.
Thank you. Thank you. Just another couple of resources for you. Some publications that we've put together, a green washroom guide and a guide to saving water in your business. These are two kind of short white papers. They're available for download from our website via those links. And of course, if you would like to find out more, you'd like to talk to us, you'd like us to come and do a site visit, etc., please drop me an email and I will put you in touch with the right person. So questions, I have got a few that have come in. So do you have any comments about the potential conflict between water hygiene management and reducing water consumption? Spray taps and showers / low use outlet flushing are issues which need to be addressed responsibly.
Do you want me to take that one, Rachel? Yeah, absolutely. Every site we visit, we try and manage water reduction and hygiene in equal measure. So the environment of where we are visiting is key. The person that's using the environment is key. How often the products are used is key. We work with a vast amount of commercial buildings, including hospitals, where obviously hygiene and the issue of Legionellas and care, regular flushing, low flow taps, making sure that water pipe is not stagnating, understanding the dynamics of the building infrastructure are all part of our design principles. So when we work with a client, we will understand the building, the user, the experience, how often the products are used, and advise the right pertinent products with the right flow rates. We recommend low flow rates in nearly all the products we put forward. However, there are occasions where you may have a sentinel point in a building which requires a higher flow rate or a more regular flushing. That's all part of our design principles, which all of us, when we visit sites, whoever attends, is part of our consideration to give you the best advice. Hope that answers that question.
Thank you. I see a couple of people had hands raised, and I think that is because they want to ask a question. So if you've got, sorry, hang on, if you've got your hand raised, please pop a question in the chat or in the Q&A and I will come to it. Sorry, Jacob.
Sorry, could I just, on the hygiene one, we have an expert that we work with on hygiene as well. It's worth pointing out that I established an organization called WaterWise, which is an NGO that promotes water efficiency. And some of the first work we did there was with the NHS, and we produced a technical health memorandum on water efficiency. And pretty much a third of that is about ensuring hygiene. And one of the interesting things is that by the very fact of doing a water management strategy and assessing your water use, it addresses those hygiene issues. And if you're worried about Legionella because of spray taps and things like this, well, hang on a minute, you should be worried about Legionella within the whole system, because it's not the spray tap that's doing it, it's the temperatures within the system. So you need to be looking at purging and flushing, all of those things. So in my view, having a water management strategy and that looks at water efficiency is also majorly beneficial for hygiene. The two things, in my view, are complementary.
Yeah, and Jacob, just to add to what you've added, is there's also water management systems available where everything could be pre-planned and organised to specific timings down to 0.0 of a second. It's very precise. And we have an example of that in Bristol, where we installed 4 water management systems across the entire site, linked them back to one network, where during the COVID closures, which is nearly 2 years, the school water system was in perfect condition when reopening was announced. No further maintenance was required because the engineers could control it remotely. That might be also an added value to certain building types.
And sorry, just one other thing. We also have been doing a lot of work around washing machines, and there's a new Xeros washing machine that uses nylon beads for washing, and it reduces consumption by about 70 or 80% and reduces detergent and energy. And with that, we spent a lot of time on hygiene, talking to the health and safety executive, talking to the Care Quality Commission, and actually the results are better, but it is something we take extremely seriously. However, there are certain, well, in most cases, the water efficient devices may be more hygienic than the non-water efficient.
There's a question about washing machines that's come in that we've obviously been doing a lot of marketing around the Xeros washing machines recently, but somebody's asking how they work.
Quite simply, the same way a traditional machine works. However, within the actual machine itself, it has a drum at the rear which holds the polymer balls. So the polymer balls create the friction with a smaller amount of water, which actually allows the fabric to move cleanly and smoothly around the washing machine without the fabrics having to rub together, which is more of a traditional wash. That means that during a normal wash cycle, what you'll find is the water saving is in excess of 50%. 50%, the water savings on the machine are associated to different wash programs. So the new Xeros machine can wash conventionally with less water. The new Xeros machine with the polymer balls can wash and reduce the amount of water it's required significantly, and also protecting the fabric using less detergent and using less energy. We've done a recent explanation to a care home where they were looking for 2 washing machines, and our washing machine was more expensive. We then done a comparison over the purchase price of that machine. We went through all of the hygiene, the red bag washing type applications. We then went through the energy costs that they were paying on their existing machine, the water costs they were paying, and their detergent costs. And we calculated a payback in 13 months for 2 machines. So again, the machine works in principle no differently. So from a process point of view, whatever your business is, whether you're a football club with maybe 20 or 30 teams and you're washing kit every day, or whether you're a care home, or whether you're a hospital, the sustainability credentials of the Xeros washing machine that we provide are off the scale. It's absolutely the most significantly green advancement in washing machine technology that this country's seen in years.
Brilliant, thank you.
Sorry, just very quickly on that one as well. I'm talking too much, but there are also, depending on what area you're in, grants available for these washing machines now. So we can actually, in some areas, subsidize the cost of the machine. So get them while they're available.
Good point, Jacob.
You talked at the beginning about waterless urinals. So let's go back to that. My facilities manager refuses to look at waterless urinals because they have had a bad experience in the past. Can you please comment on why this technology is different?
Well, I guess that's a very good question. I would obviously need to know what technology was previously installed and had a bad experience, because the waterless urinal technology has moved on leaps and bounds, especially in the last 20 years. Also, if you're going to install a waterless urinal technology, it needs to be maintained correctly. Just like you purchase a new vehicle, you don't then not maintain it. It's quite key. It's not complicated. In a certain sense, it's not different to a normal water flushed urinal in terms of maintenance. In fact, we've got customers that have said maintaining the Uramat technology is far easier and quicker and more straightforward than their previous installation. So in answering that question, I'd need to know what technology was installed before and go back to that person and say, well, what you installed, did you maintain it correctly?
Can I just add to that as well? The Uramat waterless urinal that we provide has a trap with a one-way valve. That one-way valve prevents any smells coming up through the drain to actually infect the washroom area to cause a smell. If those traps are not inserted correctly, and it's a very simple process, but if they're not inserted correctly, of course, smells will emanate from the drain. So this is about good advice, good practice. At the end of the day, if it's installed properly, we and Uramat guarantee 100% The urinals will be effective. You will save money. You will reduce your water costs. You will reduce your carbon, and you will have a very clean, hygienic washroom.
I think it's also worth pointing out that what we're talking about, the products that we use are waterless, completely waterless technology. There are other products on the market that are water reduced urinals, and sometimes the two are muddled up together. While a water reduced urinal is not something we would recommend, because those do have problems with blockages and smells, and those simply because of the chemical reaction between urine and water. So you either need a lot of water or no water at all. So there might be a mix-up in terminology.
It's also worth saying that we can take people to see some of these. They're every single McDonald's in the UK, loads of high-end hotels, big bank offices, stadia. They've all got these installed. You can actually see them and smell them, and probably haven't even realized you've used them. It's not a new thing, and they're very different to how they were, as Marcus said, 20 years ago. In my view, they're much more hygienic than water-fed urinals.
And the MBA active cleaner that we use to kill off the urine in the environment is a non-hazardous product. So you've got a fantastic design product that actually fits the circular economy as well. It's actually manufactured as a carbon neutral product, and at the end of life can be fully recycled. So it sort of ticks the box for everything, the environmental aims that we have in this country today. So I can't think of a better product. And I referred to earlier on, I made a post this morning on LinkedIn about the fact of why we're still using water to clean urinals. It makes no sense.
And again, we've just had a grant from one of the large water wholesalers to install these devices. So, you know, they're pretty much endorsed by large water wholesalers. They wouldn't be doing it if there was an issue.
It's true.
Okay. We're right at the hour that we told people. So I am going to close it off there. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending. We will, as I said, we will get this processed and we'll get an email out to you so you've got the full video and an opportunity to download the slides. If you've got any additional questions or you'd like to talk more specifically about your site, please do get in touch and we'd be absolutely delighted to talk to you. So thank you very much for everybody for attending, and thank you to our presenters today.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Rachel.